The female lead tells women's stories. Remarkable, diverse, inspiring. An educational charity promoting positive female role models who show the many different routes to success and fulfillment.
So often I hear people saying, oh, how do I get started? How do I do this? How do you do it? You just start. You have to begin. And it won't be perfect, and it'll be messy, and it'll be hard. But you're doing something, and you're on your way.
Empowering future generations of women through films. And a book of 60 women donated to 18,000 schools in the UK and USA, reaching millions of young people. And through our female lead societies, we help girls to discover new role models that speak to their passions, ambitions and careers. Through our research into social media and mental health, we found a solution to the negative impact of social media on teen girls. Through a simple intervention which encouraged girls to follow different influencers, we were able to change their entire social media experience and sense of well-being. We called this campaign Disrupt Your Feed, and it reached 20 million people on social, with 330 million impressions all over the globe. So what's next? As well as inspiring girls, we're now finding ways to measurably improve the lives of older women through data, research, and the stories of those who have overcome challenges and found their own personal versions of success. We're a long way from being finished. Join us in our mission.
Are we going to talk about women's rights again? Yes, we're going to talk about it until there's balance.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Female Lead LinkedIn Live. Today is a very special one of our series. It is the last of our series of 2020. And we will start it up again in the new year. But to celebrate this very important one in our series, we have the fabulous Dr. Dr. Maggie Aderin-Pocock. And Maggie's going to be talking to us about her fabulous career. A few words of introduction before then. I'm Edwina Dunn. I'm founder of the Female Lead, which is a charity that showcases amazing and diverse women who are shaping the world today. And just to prove it, here is the book, and here is our fabulous Maggie in there, which you can read all about or go online to see. So welcome to everybody signing in all over the world. It's great to see you. Please don't forget to send in and ask your questions. We really welcome them, and we'll come to them towards the end. So our guest today is a space scientist. I don't get to say that very often. She's also a BAFTA-nominated broadcaster and author. Her passion is presenting science to very general audiences, and she was awarded an MBE for her work. She's the founder of MD of Science Innovation Ltd, and she gives talks to many people around the world. I think 500,000 and counting. She has a BBC Two programme, Do We Really Need the Moon, which won an award. And she co-presents the very famous, long-running Sky at Night. She's also recently published The Book of the Moon and the children's book, Dr. Maggie's Grand Tour of the Solar System. Amazing. You studied at Imperial, you have a physics degree and a PhD in mechanical engineering. My goodness. What a career already. My favourite quote of yours, Maggie, is "Take your dreams to the stars." I absolutely love that. That's beautiful. Let's talk about that. Maybe we'll come to that towards the end. So my first question for you, to get us all going, can we talk about your amazing career and how it all happens? I don't think people understand how you go from studying physics and getting a PhD in engineering and then becoming a space scientist. What happens in between?
Oh, yes. Well, it's quite interesting because for me, the journey, it's been a tumultuous one because right from the get-go, I was reaching for the stars. I was inspired by people like Yuri Gagarin, the first person to space. I was born in 1968, and in 1969, the moon landings happened, so I don't remember those. But all my life, I've been sort of literally reaching for the stars, looking out there. The clangers played a major role, and also Star Trek. I think Star Trek is universal, and I watched it avidly. And so this was sort of all these things going on in my mind. But I went to 13 different schools, so that sort of messed things up a bit. And also I have a condition called dyslexia, so it meant I was in the remedial class. But all through all those challenges, I had my eyes on the stars. The prize was to get out there. And so when I finally got into university after sort of a interesting sort of school period, it was sort of, oh my goodness, yeah, this could actually happen. My crazy dream of becoming a space scientist, or maybe actually one day getting into space, could happen. And so I remember when I left university, I was thinking, yes, I'm now Dr. Maggie, I'm ready to take on the universe. But I couldn't get a job. Because at the time we were going through a sort of a credit crunch, and there weren't many jobs around, and many research organizations were laying people off. So my start was actually with the Ministry of Defence, the MOD. And that was, I would never have expected myself to work for the MOD. I think in my heart of hearts, I'm a pacifist. But it was a wonderful opportunity because it taught me different skills. So for one, the first job I was doing was actually working on a missile warning system. And I started sort of working as a team member, but because I was very keen on the work, I sort of took more and more on and sort of became a project manager. And then I actively decided to transfer from the team I was working with to another team and manage the challenge of landmines. This was at the time when Princess Diana was actually throwing a spotlight on landmines. And so I got the opportunity to sort of try and develop technology within the MOD to help detect landmines. And they're a huge global problem. I think the United Nations issued a statement saying that at the current rate of detection, it's going to take over 1,000 years to detect all the landmines that are out there. So it was something I had a passion for, and I wanted to try and make a difference, even if it was a small difference. So and so it was a very I had my eye on space, but I took a very circuitous route to get there. And eventually I got a job actually working in astronomy on a ground-based telescope in Chile. And this was almost, it was getting close to my real dream of working in space, because this was sort of an 8-meter telescope, one of the largest telescopes in the world. And I got to build an instrument with my team, and actually we shipped it out to Chile, and I was working at the telescope in Chile, sort of putting this instrument back together and waiting for it to sort of gather data from the stars. So I think many people think you sort of have an idea and then you take a straight route to it. But often I found in my career, I've zigzagged all over the place. But I think with each zig and zag, I've picked up more sort of, I like to say, tools for my toolbox, because I've picked up sort of things over here and I've picked up things over there. And so it means that I can handle more situations better by having a more varied career. So yes, it's not been a straight path at all, but it was I think having a sort of a crazy dream from the get-go really helps.
Oh, that's lovely. And did you dream of being an astronaut? Is that what it was, that sort of at the heart of this ambition?
Yeah, rather embarrassingly, I still do. It's more of a retirement plan now, but it's, I think right from the get-go, because I used to watch this series called The Clangers, and I used to watch Star Trek, and I think when I was about 3 years old, my crazy dream was to go out in space and see the curvature of the Earth like Yuri Gagarin, to travel and walk next to the footprints of Neil Armstrong, and then go out and sort of visit the Clangers, and then go out to the Star Trek domain. So all my life I have been literally reaching for the stars, with that desire to get out there. And it's funny because only about 600 people have actually been out in space, but that by having that such a crazy dream, I think it's driven me on. And when various things have happened in my life, I've said, okay, yeah, well, okay, you're falling over here, but there's the dream. So if you're going to succeed at that dream, keep your eyes on the prize. So I think I'm lucky in that way that I had such a vision very early on.
And you mentioned something there that's really important. I mean, people can look at you now and say, you've done all these amazing things. You worked hard. You became this PhD. You host TV shows. You write books. But I'm assuming it wasn't all great for you all the way there. That there were some, dark moments where you doubted that you were going to make it, because I think we all have those, don't we?
Oh, yes.
What were can you remember one particularly that would evoke that sense of you never really know until it happens?
My challenge is narrowing it down to just one, because there's been so many sort of stepping stones along the way where you slip. I describe it as slip and falling, face first in the mud, and you're sort of there and you're groveling and you think, oh my goodness, how has this gone so badly wrong? I mean, sort of going back, I remember my A-level results weren't quite as good as I had hoped, and at one point I thought I might not be able to go to university. Various projects have run along the way. I had this wonderful idea. As a dyslexic, I think I have lots of crazy ideas, but it was sort of to work with the NERC, the Environmental Council, and Blue Peter to actually sort of get space data from a satellite we called Blue Peter 1, and was going to be launched, and it was going to get data, and we were going to give this to kids across the country to work on this data and actually see the effects of climate change. And so this was a great idea, but the satellite ran late, and then Blue Peter lost interest, and it felt as if it all come together, and then it all just sort of disappeared. And so and it was sort of just a combination of various things, and some under my control, some not under my control, but it just felt as if this was a wonderful idea. It could make a real difference, and yet it didn't come together. So I think things like that do happen, and then you sit there and think, well, what did I do wrong? How could I have changed this? Why did this happen? But what I found is I have to learn from that, and I've got to learn from sort of the mistakes I made, and learn that it's not the end of the world. It feels like it at the time, and I think you need a certain sort of amount of mourning. Oh my goodness, how could that go so badly wrong? And so you could sort of recover, but then think, okay, what have I learned? Now let's rub the mud out of my face and let's see if I can go on. And I think, again, having a sort of a high goal, I always like to call it reaching for the stars. By having such a sort of a way out goal, it means that you keep your eye on it, and you have to sort of dodge the failures and the sort of the disappointments as you go along. But you know that everything you do hopefully gets you closer to that goal.
And it's part of the process, isn't it? It's really interesting you talking about dyslexia, because Jo Malone, who's also in our female lead book collection, she talks about it. And of course it heightened, or so she thought, her sense of smell, and that became her special gift. Yeah. So it's almost, if, in one dimension you're not very strong, in another you can really fly high, which I think is a lovely thought, and one we have to keep reminding ourselves of. I want to ask you, if I may, I spent 3 years trying to encourage girls and boys, but particularly girls, into what we call the STEM subjects, the science, technology, engineering and maths, because I think girls are very good at maths and science, but they tend to turn away from it. You must have thought about this so many times, and I know you've worked hard in your own right and in every capacity you have to adjust this and to rectify it. What can you say to the people out here today about why STEM subjects lead to what I think is a good path? I don't know what you think.
I'll say it's a fantastic path, and also it's a safe path. As we go through a sort of technological revolution with AI and things like that coming through, STEM careers are the robust careers that are going to sort of see us through in the future. I think other careers may fall by the wayside, but STEM is what's driving it all. So we need more STEM practitioners. And if you look in the UK, for instance, there is a deficit of STEM of kids thinking about going into STEM. There's some horrible statistics showing that many kids just won't consider STEM as a career, and that leaves us with a deficit. And there's a deficit around the world. But what I've learned is it's trying to. I usually use a three-pronged attack, because when I go out and speak to kids about STEM, I want to sort of engage them and sort of encourage them, because I think one of the problems is relevance. When I say I'm a physicist, I've heard girls say, well, if you study physics, you can only become a physics teacher, because that's the physicists they see. They don't see the myriad of other physicists in their everyday lives because they're not highlighted as physicists. So I think that's one of the problems. And just going through my life, I like to show sort of examples of what I've done as a physicist. I was recently working on a Sky One drama about called Intergalactic, where a group of sort of criminal women steal a spaceship and they travel to another galaxy, which is pretty hard actually. And so looking at the science behind that. But people who study physics, they go into banking, they go into medicine, they go into all sorts of different disciplines. So I think selling it that way and showing sort of the diversity of a career in STEM is one thing. Another thing is they don't think see how it's applicable in the real world. And so I show that sort of, for instance, I studied climate change and done many different things. But I think that one of the biggest things that can help sell STEM careers is that sense of wonder. STEM is sort of transforming our lives. If you look at the sort of pandemic at the moment, it's STEM practitioners out there trying to find solutions. In space and astronomy, we're finding things we call exoplanets, planets going around other stars. We're looking at sort of a supermassive black holes and imaging them at the center of galaxies. So we're doing all sorts of amazing things with STEM. And so I think it is sort of making that association with what they're studying in the classroom, with what the capabilities they'll have. I mean, we're almost limited by our imagination in terms of what we can do with STEM. And I don't think as STEM practitioners, we always sell it correctly. We don't give that sense of wonder and show the relevance of what they're doing in the classroom. So I've been trying to work over a few years with sort of, trying to make the STEM curriculum a little more exciting and a little more diverse as well, so that everybody feels included in that sort of that search for knowledge.
Oh, that's just wonderful to hear. And I remember a very special moment when we were with the female lead at the premiere of A Wrinkle in Time, and when Oprah Winfrey and Ava DuVernay, the director of Wrinkle in Time, basically realized you were in the audience and went, oh my God, we've got a real space scientist that we can talk to. And they had that wonderful conversation. It was a very, very special moment when they realized they had the real deal in the room. And it wasn't just the Hollywood moment. It was one of my favorite moments.
That's one of the highlights of my career. And I remember walking through the corridor afterwards, and I just felt so special. I was at this sort of exclusive event. I walked past Oprah Winfrey, and she said, "Oh yeah, you're the famous space scientist." And I said, oh, I just couldn't speak. I was just so gobsmacked. So actually, I must thank you for that, because that is definitely a highlight of my life.
And then Will.i.am said, and that's the famous space scientist, and he loves science. I remember that. That was incredible. Listen, I'm going to just give everybody a prompt. We're coming to them any moment for questions. A very quick, short one, if I may, just while we're waiting for those. Do you have your school friends still? Do they actually ever say to you, I remember you at school, how did you get to be who you are now? Does that evoke in you something special, that sense of I didn't know and they didn't know what you've gone on to do?
I think so, yes. One of the things, I went to 13 different schools, so I moved around a lot. But every so often I do bump into someone and they say, oh yeah, so how did you get there? What happened? And I think it's a matter of confidence, to my mind. I think we can do so much more. And that's what I love to tell kids. We can do so much more than we give ourselves credit for. And I think kids, and especially us women, sometimes sort of the negative voices in our heads, and it's trying to overcome that. I have that all the time. You know, what are you doing? Should you be doing this? Are you the right person for this job? And I think sometimes we can be overwhelmed by that. But it's just thinking past that and say, okay, well, I'm going to give it a go. If I fall flat on my face, I fall flat on my face. I learn to pick myself up. But so I think sometimes it's, and so I tell them, I think you could have done just as well, and you still can. There's so much we can do. But I think it's just sort of trying to put aside some of the doubt sometimes and give things a go, and knowing that it won't always work. Sometimes it will go horribly wrong, but we'll learn from that and we can keep on going.
Yeah. Oh, that's great advice. Really great advice. Well, I have been selfish. I have more questions, just, but anyway, Becky, let's go. Okay, great. I'd love to ask Dr. Maggie, please, about her experiences of dyslexia and how neurodivergence is a superpower in her current work. Ooh, good question.
Yeah, I love it. And yeah, I do see, it's funny because dyslexia is one of those things. I used to say I suffer from dyslexia, but I try not to say that anymore. And when I was at school, I did feel as if I suffered from dyslexia. And dyslexia is hereditary, so my 10-year-old daughter has dyslexia too. And when you're at school, it's all about reading and writing, and this is the things that dyslexics find really hard. But I think one of the big things in my career is it's been very diverse. So I might sort of sit on a committee for sort of a gender equality or something like that. But at the same time, I'm working with sort of drama companies and things like that. And so I think being dyslexic means that I think we have a greater creativity. We think outside the box. We just do things differently. And I think we need diversity, and neurodiversity is key. And so it's nice to be sitting on committees and everybody else is going that way. And I'm thinking, my dyslexic brain is like, hold it, but what's over there? And peering around the corner. Now, 9 times out of 10, it might be a dead end, but sometimes it leads to a real gem. And so, and I try and encourage my daughter that way, because she finds it hard at school and sort of, oh, I didn't do well in this spelling test and things like that. I'll say, okay, yeah, we've got to work harder to get where we want to get, but it is your hidden talent. And what you need to do is just set up an environment so it can thrive. So I do definitely see it as my superpower. And I'm glad you've got your superpower of working too. And it's led to a very diverse career for me. But I love that. And I love working in many, many different disciplines.
Shruti asks, what would you advise my daughter who's not interested in math but loves astronomy?
Ooh.
Can she pursue it?
Yes. Now, I think when people think of sort of a space scientist, they think of sort of people sort of, who sort of go degree and PhD and things like that. But there's many different ways to work in space science, and not all of them involve maths. For many years, I worked at a company called Astronaut, and it's sort of the 3rd largest space company in the world. And I headed up the optical instrumentation group there. And but as well as sort of scientists and engineers, we had many apprentices coming through and many people doing sort of space science, but in many different ways. So maths isn't the key. You can actually tackle these problems in many different ways and still get to sort of reach for the stars, literally, in terms of space and astronomy. So I think maths is not a hold up. In fact, we have lawyers, we have philosophers, we have many different people working in the space industry. So if you have a desire to sort of work in astronomy, there are many different ways of getting there.
One thing that surprised me that I learned is Swarovski builds some of the best lenses in the world, and they're telescope lenses. I didn't know that. I thought of them as a jewelry company.
Yes.
They're so scientific, and there are always these dimensions that we can find out about, and they surprise us, and that's where we can find our place in some of these huge companies that have multiple dimensions in them. Yeah.
But even sort of manufacturing a sort of a diamond, or sort of cutting it and faceting it, there's a science to that. I like to believe that science is virtually in everything, but we don't always see it. But it's getting the right facets on a diamond so it shines brilliantly. Yeah. That's science too. And so it's not surprising that perhaps they can use that knowledge in other areas as well.
Yeah, exciting, isn't it? Really exciting.
I love it.
Oh, here's a good one. Who was your role model growing up? I'm curious about that.
So I had a few. Firstly, it's traditional, but my parents. My mother especially was sort of literally a strong female lead. She sort of showed me that, being a woman isn't a detriment. We're strong, we're powerful, and we can make a difference. And my father gave me the gift of science, really, because I was finding it hard at school. And when I was living with him, he'd say, okay, let's go to the library, because we used to do that, and get books on physics, and would learn together. So he gave me that joy. But then there's other people, like Yuri Gagarin. I mentioned, the first person to go into space. I found out that we both were born on the 9th of March, and he died the year I was born. Now, I don't actually believe in reincarnation, but I do love the idea of handing on the baton. Lieutenant Uhura, a few years ago, I got to meet her. And in our home, because there weren't many black people on TV, Lieutenant Uhura, although there was the actress playing a fictional character, she summarized everything I wanted to do. She was the communications officer, and on a starship traveling through the universe, and a starship with many different people from all over the world. And in the 1970s, when I was growing up, the world seemed a bit fractured. I was black, and so I didn't quite fit into the UK, and my relatives didn't think I was Nigerian. So the idea of being on a spaceship with sort of people from all over the world was fantastic. So my role models were, some were real, some were fictional, but they just gave me a vision of what might be possible. And I think that's what role models should be. But I also think it's really important that role models, we're all role models. We've all got something to share. And sometimes I used to think I couldn't be a role model because I'm pathologically untidy. I'm criminally late for everything. So I'm not perfect. But to be a role model, I think we need our warts and all to show that you can do it too. And that's what I like to tell kids. I'm doing this, but you can do this and better, because we've all got something to share and all got something to be excited about.
Oh, I think that's absolutely wonderful. I love it. Now, I know we're on a really tight frame. Oh, we've got time for one more. Great. Ramin asks, what will be your advice for my younger sister who dreams for being a space astronaut but gets frightened if her mission fails?
Yes. Now, as an astronaut, in the early days, when astronauts were going out there, it was quite a challenging thing. When Yuri Gagarin did his flight, I think there was a 50% chance of him returning safely. So in those days, it was quite scary. But these days, it is much, much safer. And I think in the future, I'm getting very excited about the future, because it is much safer than it used to be. And also more and more of us are saying we want to get out there. And I think space is becoming more commercialized. And just like in the early days of flying across the world, it was only sort of the great and the good who took flights across the world. And now we've got things like EasyJet. And so I think more and more of us are looking to space. Space is becoming more commercialized. And so I think space will be accessible to many more of us in the future. And with that sort of a commercialization comes sort of more safety features, more things like this. Just sort of the greater turnaround makes the whole area safer. So I take my hat off to people like sort of SpaceX and other companies, Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic, because they're trying to make space accessible for all of us. But I must admit, my dream is still to about 3 or 4 months ago, NASA announced that the first woman to walk on the moon is going to be there by 2024. Now, because 12 men have walked on the moon, but no women so far. So I'm doing everything I can to be that woman standing on the moon in 2024. So I think
we want that. We want that.
I think just by having that desire to get out there, she can make it happen. She can find the ways and the means. And yes, there'll be stumbling blocks and there will be fear. But I think the elation of looking down at planet Earth will be worth every step of the way.
That's wonderful. So Maggie, we probably have to draw this to a close, but there's a last question here, which is, what's next for you? I think you might have said you want to be up there in the stars, but I'm going to ask you, where do you want to be in 5 years' time with your 15-year-old daughter?
Yes, gosh, Laurie at 15. In fact, I'm running off to go and collect her from school. One of the things I've started doing is during lockdown, we didn't realise, but we set up a small home studio. So we've been making our own films, and I'm very lucky because I get sort of access to sort of be on TV and things like that. But I have so many ideas. It's nice to be sort of forming my own ideas and filming them. So we've been doing that at home. So in 5 years' time, I'd love it if I had my own home studio, and that my daughter and I was really taken by Disrupt the Feed, trying to get sort of good things on YouTube that sort of stimulate the mind as well as entertain. So we're trying to do sort of things along those lines. So it'd be nice to be well established in that in the next 5 years. Also, I'm sitting on a commission for the government on disparities in race and ethnicity, and trying to work out just like there's some bad health outcomes for people of various different ethnicities. So it'd be nice if in 5 years' time, the work that we've put in sort of in the last few months actually came out to fruition, and there was changes and a leveling up of the playing field in many different areas. So I think those might be my two big highlights, and that and traveling into space, because that'll be by 2024. So hopefully I'd have been to the moon by then.
So not small things, world stages, extraordinary things. Maggie, you are extraordinary. We are so incredibly proud of you as one of our absolutely loved and admired female leads. Thank you for seeing us out this year, and thank you for coming on our LinkedIn Live. And if you have a last message for everybody out there, please take it away.
Thank you. So I think my message would be think big. I think so often we diminish ourselves. When I was growing up, people said, oh, don't reach too high, you might fall over. Think big, fall over, pick yourself up and keep going. That would be my message. And have a lovely season's greetings to everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.